friend Missina, and welcome to my Genshin channel. Notecry is getting closer, and we finally got the announcement for the special program. I know I'm kind of making a video on an announcement of an announcement, but trust me, there is so much I want to talk about here, both about just the image we see here and also what I expect from Notecry. And without further ado, I immediately want to jump into the title. Song of the Welkin Moon, Segue, A Dance of Snowy Tides and Hoarfrost Grooves. First and foremost, no 6.0! I would assume most people would still be using 6.0 for this version, but according to the Twitch page, from now on the versions will be called Lunas, this version being called the Luna I, and while the official title for this version is Segue, in Chinese it's actually pretty fun, since that directly follows the Sonata form, with already the 5.8 Archon quest being called Interlude, and this first Luna is the Exposition. And I also want to talk about A Dance of Snowy Tides and Hoarfrost Grooves, because there are two things here, the Snowy Tides and the Hoarfrost Grooves. In Japanese is basically like the silver tides and the blue forest, which in Japanese blue is also green, and also the word they use here is often used for like gray hair or like pale stuff. Japanese is weird, I don't want to get into that. What I want to get into though is that these grooves, this forest kind of reminds me of two things. First and foremost, obviously the bamboo forest, because bamboos are also blue in Japanese. Trust me, it's very weird how it works, but this could be the bamboo forest, moonlit bamboo forest, even though that story is more resembling Lia, not like Notecry or Shejnea. The girl who helps the boy through the forest could potentially be Columbina. Most of the descriptions, maybe besides the eye color, is kind of matching her, but it could be a lot of different characters, could just be like a metaphorical character. But nonetheless, the fact that there was this forest where at night the monsters came out, really resembling what we have seen so far from Flins, because if you remember the latest Gamescom trailer, Flins was in the cemetery, and whenever the pink mist came up, that's when the Wild Hunt appeared, and Flins even said something like, "Don't be here alone at night." So this dynamic kind of reminded me of that one, as like Flins being our guide there. But there's another book I want to mention, and I think we all know what that book is. That is The Pale Princess and the Six Pygmies. The moon has always been a main part of Genshin, and this book is especially interesting because of the moon's power over the darkness. Just like in the Bamboo Lit Forest and just like in the Flint's trailer, we have seen the Wild Hunt being in a dark forest, and that is very similar to how the book says abhorrent creatures lurking at the edge of the forest. And the Abyss knows that this book contains secrets of Tibet. That's the reason they wanted to steal it. And we also know from Nahida that these fairy tales are the best way to preserve stories in Tibet, because these stories cannot be changed even through the Irmin Soul. So while so far we only got the first volume public, I think it's pretty safe to say that the other books contain some hidden secrets or maybe some prophecies, and Abyss would wanna get a hand on that because it could be about the Abyss and Tibet's constant fighting. And we also know from the book's descriptions that are public that the story revolves around the Pale Princess, the Light Prince, and the Six Pygmies. Now, one very likely theory could be that the princess is Lumine and the prince is Ether, which I mean could make sense because the princess is the one who is already living there, and canonically the Abyss sister is who is part of Tibet. And that would leave us with the Six Pygmies, who could be 5 sinners and Dunslave. I mean, he was part of them at one point, he just kind of like split up. We know from the descriptions that these Pygmies were up to no good, so them being the sinners would kind of make sense. In this scenario, the only question remaining would be, who is this Night Mother and what kind of prophecy she has? And we also know that most likely this is what the Abyss wants to know, and with Abyss activities being so high in Notecry, and obviously we are getting close to the end of Genshin, I think it's about time we get all the books. Please, Genshin, please. And if you are the Abyss, I'm gonna use a lot of segues here. Get it? Because that's like segue. Welkin Moon segue. If you are talking about the Abyss, I also want to mention that in Notecry they are called the Wild Hunt. And this is something that I mentioned in many of my previous videos. But I want to talk about the Honkai. In other Hoyoverse games, this mysterious force destroying everything is called Honkai. And the thing is that we already know that the Abyss equals Honkai, not from Genshin, but from Honkai sword itself, where Sha was talking about how humans don't call Honkai Honkai, but it's Abyss for them. And since you know that the Heavenly Principles brought humans into Tibet, it's really not far-fetched thinking that Genshin is part of the broader Honkaiverse, especially because Sha's whole thing was recreating her civilization somewhere where it's safe from the Honkai. Now, I'm not saying Sha equals Heavenly Principles, because Sha was a girl, and Heavenly Principles, while not really being gendered anywhere, still at one point it was said that the Heavenly Principles are androgynous, and then Piero, when referring to the gods, also said he. But nonetheless, even if the Heavenly Principles is not Sha, it's more or less confirmed that at least Sha Luna and Heavenly Principles are from the same planet, from the same civilization. And even if Genshin would never attach itself to the Honkaiverse more than that, this is all confirmed. I don't even think we can call this a theory anymore. I kinda got my hopes up that we would get even more connection canonically when Skirk in her trailer said the word Honkai by its name, Honkai. But after that, she never brought it up in the game again, so I guess there goes my theory. Nonetheless, the reason I wanted to mention it is because Notcry also has their own word for the Abyss, the Wild Hunt, and we might get some clarifications why they have a different name, and on that point, if it has other names in other worlds. So that's it for the Abyss. Let's go back to our humans, to the PV image, where we see a lot of the characters, but notably not Varka, not Durin, not Alice, not Scaramouche. I could see two different things happening here. First of all, a lot of the times there are just two different splash arts. It happened in 5.8 as well, where the second one was shown on the stream for the first time within FA. But also could be that in 6.0 or Segway, first we're introduced to the new Notcry characters, and only after that when we meet the Hexen Circle and the Favonius Knights. There are a few very interesting things to notice. Both the Traveler and especially Paimon are really angry at something. I don't know what it could be that made them so angry, but they are definitely fuming right now, while the polar opposite in the background, Columbina, just flying in the air. So these two characters, let's talk about them. First of all, Paimon, and what could be her identity, and the Welkin Moon as well. This is another thing I talked about in many of my videos beforehand, but Paimon has always been suspicious. And I'm not even talking about those people who still say that Paimon equals Asmodai. I mean, other things like the Welkin Moon that gives us our beloved Primer Gems every day resembles heavily Paimon, the Aranara Arama calling Paimon silver just like the moon, and Kanotila saying, to my eyes, Paimon is just like a little rainbow balloon flying in the sky, and her string seems to extend upward to somewhere above the sky itself, and several other occasions. Originally, I said that the Welkin Moon, this new moon, might be Paimon. I'm not necessarily sure how strong this theory holds up anymore, because now we know that Columbina is the Moon Maiden, and the Fatui's plan is to make a new moon that is involving her. But still, Paimon 100% has something to do with the moons, if for nothing else than the moons being the center of the Genshin lore, and Paimon being our oldest friend in the game. So there has to be some connection between them. Let's move on to Columbina. And actually, let's move on to the Harbingers in general, because a very long-standing mystery is revolving around the 10th Harbinger, or should I say, the lack of a 10th Harbinger. It's a very weird situation because we know there are 11 Harbingers, and we know 11 Fatui Harbingers, but from everything we know, Piero does not have a rank. He is the director and the founder of the Fatui Harbingers, and since Tartaglia is the 11th one, this is something we also know. We can fill out all the ranks, but the 10th seat remains empty. This might not be anything important because it could be there are seats empty. Even ever since Scaramouche erased himself from the Irmin Soul to the Fatui, it looks like that his seat is also empty, just like the 10th seat. There could be some big plot twists here, like what if the 10th Harbinger did also something similar to that? Or some other wild theories. What if Tartaglia, once he gets stronger, once he learns how to use the bow, would move up a seat and he would become the 10th Harbinger? And to add even more confusion to this faction, Columbina is not even introduced as a Harbinger anymore. If you remember, Sandrona was still a Harbinger, but Columbina was just a Moon Maiden, no Harbinger. So all I know, things are happening in the Fatui, and since you see both Sandrona and Columbina in the PV, that is something I'm definitely looking forward to in the special program. For now, it looks like the Fatui wanna catch Columbina, and the Frost Moon Scions are trying to protect her. But again, this is Genshin, nothing what it seems like, so this could be something entirely different as well. And I just want to mention it because it's just so funny, but take it as a joke. This is like not a real theory. In the Chinese community, a theory about the Traveler becoming the 10th Harbinger is actually getting kind of popular, which I mean, it's a joke, but if you think about it, eventually we're gonna meet Chesnia. Eventually, the Tsaritsa is gonna be a playable character, and no matter how bad the Archons were, for example in A's case, eventually we made friends with them, we joined their faction, so I guess could be something similar with the Tsaritsa. I'm just putting it out here, but this is more of a joke. What's not a joke though are, okay, this is gonna be one of the worst segues, but visions. visions and moon wheels. While in the game the visions and the moon wheels are pretty much the same, so much so that while I know lore-wise is supposed to have a vision, from what we've seen so far it kind of looks the same as Inafa's or Flinz's moon wheel. And I would assume as a new character she would also have the moon reactions, the lunar charges. But keep in mind, the developers mentioned in the dev update, probably very intentionally, that they might separate lore from gameplay if the overall experience would be better with that. Still, we are talking about lore here, and one very interesting part of the whole moon wheel concept is that who gives out the moon wheels? While I know likely got her hydro vision from technically Nuvilet as part of his duty to set aside a portion of his power, the moon wheels are a little different. They have a purer form of power than the elemental energy, and they were made for the Moon Sisters followers so they can communicate. But why? The timeline is not entirely explicit here, but it's likely the Heavenly Principles made the Moon Wheels first alongside the Moon Sisters, and only then, after defeating Nibelung and leading into the Archon War, made the Gnosis and with that the Visions. If it was because two of the Moon Sisters have died at that point, that still wouldn't make sense, because how are moon wheels then purer? So maybe the moon wheels are too OP even with only one moon remaining. So the Heavenly Principles wanted something weaker or something to have a better control over. But one thing is sure, we know they are different. And the visions are also likely were made from the third descender. There are hints for that in other languages because the visions are Kaminome, which are the god's eyes, and the gnosis are Kamino Kokoro, which are the god's heart, little body parts. While we don't know that much about the moon wheel's origin, besides the fact that it was made by Heavenly Principles and the three moons. So what is the difference between them? I don't know. I don't have answers to that. I just wanted to mention it because this is something I'm absolutely looking forward to in Not Cry. And I don't have any segues anymore. Just there are two more things I'm gonna talk about that we would probably see in the stream on Friday. The first thing is the UGC mode. I talked about this beforehand. I have a whole video about explaining what is the UGC mode. But there has been some updates in that regard, because on both the Chinese and global platforms, now we have verified official accounts for Miliastra Wonderland, with the bio saying Vendor the 1,000 Stars, Shape Myriads of Wonderlands. And on the Chinese platforms, we even got what seems to be an official icon for this new UGC mode, Paimon holding a magic ball kind of thing. Similarly, on the Chinese platforms, there is a public recruitment going on right now for creative beta testers with record number of popularity, the post getting over 122,000 likes at the recording of this video. They also teased on their Weibo group that there are some reveal going to happening in 2 days, which would be during the special program, so I'm definitely looking forward to that. And there is one last thing I want to talk about. This is something that actually the Japanese cast have kind of teased already, because they just had their brand new Genshin podcast's first episode where they talked about a lot of fun things. Even Venti was like, oh, I don't know if I'm gonna be appearing in Not Cry.
申し上げられることは何もございません。
But they also teased there's gonna be a new big global collaboration, and while they haven't said with who, they made some like joke predictions.
メガバンクコラボ。メガバンクコラボだ。
ATM から声がするの。
それはあるかも。
So all the ideas are just thrown around, but we don't know yet who is this company that they're collabing with. However, we might know more things this Friday, especially because Venti, Sunli, and Lauma are gonna be the special guests. I mean, this is gonna be a big pet stream, so obviously for the stream itself, it's gonna be Dave and his colleagues who are doing all the introduction. But we actually know there's gonna be like an about 10-minute segment before and also something else after the stream as well. And that is the part when the Japanese stream said that they're gonna be having Venti, Sunli, and Lauma. And while this is most likely gonna be more about the 5th year anniversary, it also could be they're gonna be announcing something with a collab. Who knows? Nonetheless, I think I talked about every single thing I wanted. If there's anything I missed, make sure to write me a comment. I'm gonna be streaming my reactions to the special program this Friday, both on Twitch, it's Sunshine now, and here on YouTube as well. And after the special program is over, obviously I'm gonna make my whole analysis video where I wanna go through every single little detail that I talked about. But until then, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did so, make sure to give a like. And if you wanna see more content like this, then make sure to subscribe. I'm Genshin channel, and see you in the next one. Bye bye!